everyone. So, speaking the same language. So, we all know that's important. It's how we understand each other. It's how we express our ideas and our goals. And when we're not speaking the same language, things get a little awkward. It's the reason our slides aren't in hieroglyphics, or why Christi and I aren't delivering this talk as an interpretive dance. And our financial desktops often feel pretty awkward. It's hard to get our applications to work with each other. The best tool that we have is copy and paste. Like RBC just said, you have all these applications, and it's really annoying to get them to speak the same language. So sometimes it seems like we're moving forward. Maybe your CTO just read an article on microservices, but now you're managing 15 apps. Or it's been 3 months, and you've been waiting, and you finally got approval to install Excel. That's not fun. And as great as that life sounds, there's got to be a better solution out there. And maybe it's a solution that we can all work together to get to. And we have an example with us every day that we use that has the answers to this problem. So our phone is a great example of how we can do this right. Our phone is flexible, apps seamlessly work together, and then we could pick and choose which ones we want. And that's great because it's a wonderful user experience. It's a fluid feeling. I don't have to think about using this app and copying and pasting to another app. That's just annoying. And it'd be fantastic if we could bring that idea to our desktops. And so that's where FDC3 comes in. My name is Keshal Desai, and this is Christi Reid. And we're both web developers at Adaptive Financial Consulting. And we're here to show you how FDC3 can bring you a rich cross-application experience on your desktops. So many of you are probably familiar with FDC3 by now. But if you're not, we're going to give you a quick overview of the basics before we move on to what the value is that FDC3 can bring you. So FDC3 stands for Financial Desktop Connectivity and Collaboration Consortium. Serious brownie points if you can say that 5 times fast. It was started by OpenFin in 2017, and it's hosted, maintained, and updated by the FinTech Open Source Foundation. The initial specifications was released in March of this year, and you can find a link to the documentation right there at the bottom. Okay. So FDC3 is composed of 4 major ideas: an app directory, intents, context data, and an API. The app directory is where we can find applications and see what they can support. Intents are how we say what we want to do. And context data is how we describe the data payloads for our intents. So because charting is so hot right now, we can use that as an example. So our intent could be something like view chart, just something really, really simple. And our context data for that chart can be something like an instrument. So our context data can have maybe a ticker or an ISIN. And then our API ties everything together. It's a set of operations that lets us communicate our intents and our context data together. So what happens is that FDC3 allows you to abstract away the effort and allows you to find the best applications you want for your workflow.
Great. So we just had an overview of what FDC3 is, but you might be sitting there wondering, how does this relate to me, and why does it matter? Well, as he mentioned, with our phones and tablets, we're able to click on data in one application, say an address, and open up Google Maps, or click on directions and suddenly have an Uber waiting outside our door. What FDC3 does is it takes us away from thinking about applications individually and towards workflows. But it's actually even more than that. So the first thing I want to talk about is cost reduction. So we've all been there. Or maybe we're in the process of, or we're talking about breaking down these giant monolithic applications into smaller, more reusable components. We've learned that this big app development doesn't really work. Consider how your team might be cross-region in different time zones, and you've got to coordinate a release cycle. Even more than that, think about all the time you have to to block out just to test one tiny change that might end up breaking the entire application. Well, with FDC3, when you decouple the parts of your application into reusable components, suddenly you can release them on their own individual timelines, and you can also test them in isolation. But even more than that, as you add more and more components to this application built up of smaller parts, you add more value. So beyond cost reduction, you actually open up new revenue possibilities. So I'm sure many of you are currently in the process of trying to connect cross-organizational applications. Not easy, I know. You're probably in a room for hours arguing across each other, thinking, nope, my priorities are better than yours. But once you get over that, then you have to consider, all right, we have got these legacy applications with our new ones, and how do we have them communicate with one another when they're built in entirely different frameworks? So then someone inevitably raises their hand and they're like, okay, we're going to rebuild one of these from the ground up. But do you really want to do that? Is it even worth it at that point? So what FDC3 does is it allows you to communicate between these different applications, your legacy with your new applications, without having to rebuild any of them. It doesn't matter if they're built in Angular, if they're built in just raw JavaScript. They'll be able to add value by creating workflows of these different applications, many of which have been locked up in isolation because nobody wanted to go near some really old framework that nobody knows how to develop in anymore. So now you have your legacy apps talking to your new applications. But as more and more financial applications start to become FDC3 compliant, you open up new network opportunities. Now, you have third-party applications, your legacy applications, and anything you decide to build forward, all able to communicate with one another and play nicely. So you can create a whole world of different workflows. So let's take an example. So say in the system, you have an alert. It pops up. Normally, in the past, you'd have one application that would give you the price of a commodity. You'd either see this streaming through as a ticker in, say, Bloomberg, or you'd receive the information over email, and you'd have to copy and paste that commodity price and put it into a different system. But in this scenario, imagine if you could just click on that alert, and it brings you to a chat that you've been having with a client who you know is interested in that commodity. Within that chat application, contextual data surfaces, and with the click of a button, suddenly you've got live data of that commodity streaming through your chat application, such as Symphony. Now your client can click on that and be taken to another application where they can place the order. This is just one workflow of many that you can create now that all these different applications can talk with one another. So let's speak the same language. You can reduce costs, open up new revenue possibilities, and have network effects because now you can interact with any third-party application using this protocol, and you don't have to have their source code. So keep FDC3 in mind the next time you're developing or even breaking down an application or even considering, oh gosh, do I have to rebuild this from scratch? Thank you. So again, I'm Christi. This is Keshal. We're from Adaptive. And if you're interested in learning more about FDC3 and how Adaptive is using it with our open source project, Reactive Trader Cloud, come see us in the back. Thank you. Thanks.